think that it's so easy when you have your own company or you're doing this by yourself that you can like get inundated with what's not working. And when a lot of times what's working outweighs what's not working, but we tend to focus on what's not working, and if we can change that focus to this is what is working, and these are the people that have been amazing as opposed to these people who are not so nice. If we can really keep our focus there, it's amazing what can kind of open up for you a little bit.
My pleasure to have a fellow San Franciscan, Alex, here with me. You've made it really easy to onboard onto Whimstay. It was actually a very simple process. So you talk more about that, about who you integrate with, what's the philosophy behind that?
Yeah, so it was a focus for us.
Besides going on Whimstay, how should operators think about capturing that last minute demand?
So I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle.
But as you kind of think through the journey with your partner and your co-founder, what's one of the nicest things that someone's done for you?
So I'm going to say,
welcome back to STR Like the Best. I'm your host, Michael Chang. It's my pleasure to have a fellow San Franciscan, Alex, here with me. But just to introduce the show, this is STR Like the Best by Michael Chang. This podcast is solely focused on short-term rentals. We interview leading operators and investors in the space. And the goal of the show is to help you better invest both your time and your money in short-term rental investing. So whether you are looking to get to short-term rentals or you're an existing operator, listening to these episodes will help you frame what is going on in the industry and help you maximize both your property investment and the time that you spend on managing your real estate portfolio. So with that, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. It was always good to meet a fellow San Francisco Giants fan as we were talking below the show.
Giants. We had a good day. We had a good day recently. We got a nice trade in the books. So
we closed the big deal. Exactly.
Big
so
deal.
Let's let's hope that rubs off on all of us here. But Alex is the CEO founder of Whimstay. It is an OTA that specializes in last minute rentals, and it's actually a platform that we utilize. We've utilized now for over a year. We connected the HostAway API. So thank you for making more money for me and my company. Appreciate it, Alex. You're doing a great job.
I'm glad that we can help. Yeah, I'm glad we can help. We have a very specific thing that we do, so I'm very glad that we can incremental revenue. We love it, right?
So. Exactly. It's always good to meet someone that is helping me make money. So I appreciate it. So, Alex, it makes this conversation.
Works both ways.
There you go. Why don't I give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your company to the listeners?
My name's Alex Alioto, and I am co-founder of Whimstay, head of growth. I'll tell you a little bit about Whimstay. We're an OTA in the short-term rental space. What we do is we help you guys fill unsold gap nights last minute. That's basically the idea. So I think Michael and I had chatted a little bit before this going on air. I think the best sort of comp to it is Hotel Tonight, but for the short-term rental industry. So that's what we do.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about the idea you and your partner, Ben, when you guys started this. What was the idea behind Whimstay? And you guys have grown so much over the last couple of years. Walk us a little bit through that journey.
Yeah, I mean, it was. So Ben is my business partner, and he's been very successful in tech and some other business ventures over the years. And he got to a stage in his life where he was sort of like, he made enough money and he was semi-retired, and so he had bought a home in Truckee, couple in Maui, and so he just had a sort of a short-term rental portfolio, and that's what he was doing. And he recognized at one point that if the inventory was expiring in any way, then there was really nothing that he could do in order to get that sold, right? So what he did was he thought that's, hope is your strategy. Really, the only thing that he could do at that point was throw a discount onto Airbnb and hope it gets booked out. And hope is not a very good strategy. And so I think that his sort of business mind started to work, and he was like, there has to be a better solution. There has to be some type of OTA that exists that's very specific about expiring inventory. So that is around the time that I met him. I was an executive at sales executive at Yelp at the time, and making a very good living and having a great time. And then I decided to leave all of that behind and start a company. So there we go. Cool. Sort of the genesis.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, and it's always like, opportunity meets preparation. So,
Totally,
he had the
totally.
idea, and you have the sales chops, which, I mean, without sales, there's no business.
Everything, it's so funny. It's like one thing I've recognized about this company is that's like everything is timing, number one, and everything it's so much about sort of who you meet at right specific times, and if you kind of keep your eyes open and your ears alive to what's going on, like things will kind of come to you in a way. You just have to make sure to execute on them. So
You
it's
do.
kind of an interesting thing in life.
You bring a good point, actually. I want to I want to better understand this. So, expiring inventory, I think it's a challenge that all short-term rental investors, owners deal with. Right, once that day passes, you don't. There's no revenue associated with that. It's like the food is expired, the night is expired, and this is a very high fixed cost business. Your mortgage, if you own the property, your rent, if you're doing the subleasing strategy, you're paying that cost no matter if it's filled or not. Your only true variable cost really is your cleaning, utilities, your financing costs associated with the real estate is fixed. So maximizing occupancy really is how you're going to make money and stay afloat in this business. So you brought up a really good point, right? Why does Whimstay need to exist? Why can't we just discount last minute on Airbnb, or use a pricing software like Price Labs or Beyond, for example, and just have a big discount? And it's going to discount the price. So why deal with the brain damage of integrating with a Whimstay or a different OTA? Like,
Yeah,
what's the value prop?
it's a really good question. I'm gonna lead off by saying this: we're not reinventing the wheel. So if you look at any sort of business vertical across any landscape, this model exists, right? Nordstrom has Nordstrom Rack. Calvin Klein has their Calvin Klein outlet stores. Grocery stores have the grocery store outlet. Hotels have Hotel Tonight. It's not a new model. It just wasn't a model within our industry, right?
Hmm.
The reason why is for a number of different reasons. People want sometimes, right? People are searching for value before they're making the decision, right? So that's the very first thing is we find that a lot with our travelers where they're not saying, I'm in San Francisco on Wednesday, I want to go to Tahoe on Friday. They're not always saying, well, what's out there and let me see. Sometimes they are saying, should I go to Tahoe? That's the good price. Yes, I'm going to go to Tahoe. So the move is based on the value itself. I think that's the
Hmm.
first thing. I think within our industry itself, you have to have a diverse distribution strategy, especially now considering the compressed booking windows. So you have to meet each traveler, right? So if you look at sort of the ecosystem itself, I'm going to kind of generalize it a little bit, right? But it's like Verbo is about 180 to 90 days out. That's kind of what their sweet spot is. Airbnb is very good at 90 to 30 days out. That's what their sweet spot is. Whimstay is really good 30 days and under. That's our sweet spot. If you, as a host or a property manager or whatever, have a strategic distribution strategy, a strategic one that encompasses everybody, now we're talking incremental revenue because you're not taking from Airbnb people, you're not taking from VRBO people, you're not taking from Booking.com people. These are new, different, separate travelers altogether. Discounting yourself on Airbnb, you're kind of cannibalizing your product to a certain extent. Number one, you might as well keep it at a high value for those days in case somebody finds it, right? And in addition to that, again, I mentioned it was hope, right? You've got this discount, you're putting it on Airbnb, and at that point, you're just kind of hoping that somebody finds it amongst the other thousands of people that are in your market. Why don't you have a very, very specific model whose only job is to get you last minute bookings and expire and fill out the expiring inventory? So
Yeah.
that's really the idea. I think it's the reason why I think Nordstrom is probably the one that I think about always the most, right? Where that it was an extra $1 billion in revenue for them by adding Nordstrom Rack. And so
Hmm.
it's just it fits sort of certain consumer behaviors. And it's incremental, right? It's
Yeah.
on top of what's already there.
No, I like that. I like that framing, and I think it's a really good way of highlighting the value. I think two things: highlighting the value of a broader distribution strategy. So, being on multiple OTAs, online travel agents. That's what the acronym stands for.
Yeah.
And I think you highlight a good point there, right? You want to meet the customer where they're at, and some customers they're looking for value first, versus like maybe the typical traveler on VRBO and Airbnb. If they're looking for value first, they're going to go to a Nordstrom Rack. They're going to go to a Whimstay. They're going to go to a hotel tonight because they're looking for like, hey, what do I get? What's the maximum value versus exactly the type of property? Like, maybe they're indifferent between it having a hot tub or not a hot tub, but what they really care about is the price and the location. And if you can meet them there, um, you're meeting that value customer at Whimstay versus, again, fighting with everyone at Airbnb. Actually, I'm kind of curious on, you broke down the booking windows or typical booking windows for the competitors within the space. What do you think booking.com falls in that?
It's a
30,
good
60,
question.
30, 30, 90, 90
Yeah,
plus.
that's a good question. I've looked at bookings data in Europe because Verbo isn't really a thing in Europe. It's Booking that's kind of a thing in Europe, right? And if you saw one of their quarterly reports, I think 35% of all of their lodging bookings were alternative accommodations.
Yeah.
That's
No, they're huge
massive.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're really kind of picking it up big time, particularly in the U.S. Um, so I can't answer that intelligently, only because I know what their data looks like in Europe. I just don't know what it
Mhm.
looks like in the U.S. as much. But if I were to guess, and I'm venturing a guess, I think it would be closer on that Verbo scale. I think it would be
Perfect.
a little bit closer to that
Yeah.
180 to 90-day out window.
Interesting. You,
Yeah,
you highlight the point about Booking.com. And I think a lot of people sleep on Booking.com because it's
yeah,
very much a European brand, but they're a big part of my business. They're about 20% of my business.
yeah.
They've invested a lot in marketing the US. So if you're not on Booking.com, I know there is actually a stigma or there's a bias against Booking.com, strangely, because they're not as easy to integrate like Airbnb is. They're not just as user friendly. They have some like odd European quirks as well as like breakfasts. They're very big on breakfast at the hotel, so you have to manage around that. Um, but they're a very valuable OTA to integrate with. And I always kind of highlight to all the people in our STR Like the Best community, that where we teach people how to invest in short-term rentals. You got to be on all the OTAs. Like that is something. If you're just on Airbnb, one, you're just beholden to their rules. If you have a bad guess, something goes wrong, you're on one platform and then that goes away. You don't have any distribution. And also, second, like not everyone books on Airbnb. I feel like people feel like that's the only place that people book, but
No, it's not, and
we're
it's the landscape is changing pretty dramatically. I mean,
dramatically.
if you're only on Airbnb, then you're not really a business owner. You're just you work for Airbnb, basically, right?
No,
And I
I
and I'm not one of those people that trashes Airbnb. I don't think our industry is where it is now without them. And so I think that but I think that they do a lot. I think where Airbnb drops the ball, in my opinion, is how they treat their hosts. And that's fine. I think that they, that's what they're doing now. I think they're focusing on services a lot now, right? They're focusing on their new product. It seems to be. I mean, it's the default when you go to Airbnb is no longer short-term rentals.
yeah,
It's
experiences.
now their new product, which
Yeah,
I think is, whatever, it's fine. But I also think that if you are only with Airbnb, then you are really only taking one swath of a customer. You're only taking one type of a customer, one type of a traveler. Again, it's like it's if you had a portfolio, of stocks and bonds and things like that, you would have it be diverse. You would have real estate, you would have
yeah,
stocks, you would have bonds, you would have all sorts of things. It's important to have true diversity. It's the same thing with your distribution. You need to have true diversity. You need to be able to get to everybody. In addition to that, you need to be able to, as I mentioned before, you need to ensure that you're maximizing windows. And so,
yeah.
um, we're in a really interesting time right now where booking windows are compressing and compressing. I think it's the reason we're seeing as much success as we are, and for 1,000 different reasons, right? And so it sort of started around COVID. It's continued for different reasons, but it's continued, and I think I think travelers want the variety. I
They
think
do.
travelers are just as sometimes fed up with Airbnb as some of the hosts are.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you can think about how you found this podcast, maybe it was on TikTok or Instagram, or maybe someone shared it with you. I don't run ads for the show or have any sponsorships. So the only way this grows is through word of mouth. If my podcast is valuable for you in any way, please hit the subscribe button and share this with someone who you think would help their investing journey or business. Thanks a lot, and let's continue on with the episode. Well, I'm not one to trash on Airbnb. They are
No,
a significant part of my business, and
hmm
they're the ones that have kind of established trust and really established this vertical within travel. So I think all of us owe a debt of
Our industry is not where it is now
gratitude,
without them.
exactly, to Brian and
That's
his team. But as it matures, I think the hosts have to mature, and
yeah,
there is definitely they've become less host friendly. I mean, I think just qualitatively with their rules. Not to get into kind of investing philosophy, but if you listen to Ben, the aggregation theory, right? They're focused on the demand side, not on the supply side. So it is what it is, and that's why being on all the different OTAs. And I think what I like about you guys is, so we connect through Hostaway's API into Whimstay, and it was actually very, very easy to integrate with the platform. So I know you're the head of growth, so talk to us a little about that. Like, how do people? You've made it really easy to onboard onto Whimstay. It was actually a very simple process versus other OTAs where it's a much more. So maybe
yeah,
talk more about that, about who you integrate with, what's the
yeah.
philosophy behind that.
Yeah, so it was a focus for us. I think that as a newer OTA in the space, one of the things that we needed to make sure that we were doing was to make it as frictionless as possible. So we have an incredible integration team, an incredible engineer and dev team, and what we have created is an onboarding that lasts 10 minutes maybe. So, and that's really kind of it. We're integrated in the top, basically, if you think about it, top 25 PMS and channel managers. We can also connect as well via an Airbnb link if you wanted to do it that way as well. So you don't need to do the full PMS integration or channel manager integration. And again, the idea is really, really quick. You could do it automated. And then one thing that's also really important to us is client service and customer service. And so every single person that connects via a channel manager or a PMS will have an account manager. And so it's a human being to talk to, which I know can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. And so sometimes that makes things a little bit less frictiony because sometimes, data pushes are odd with PMSs, right?
Right.
Might not get, pricing might come in strange, taxes might come in strange. So that's something that, and our account management team, brilliant account management team, has incredible relationships with every PMS and channel manager. So we kind of get on a Slack line, boom, 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 let's fix it, and it gets done. So,
Mhm.
and that doesn't even happen very often. I would say 5% of our onboards have any type of sort of corrupted data push. So, and most of our PMS partners are really, really clean that way, Hostaway being one of them. So, yeah, so we just decided we needed to make it frictionless, and we decided we needed to have person to person contact. So
Yeah.
those were kind of two of the things that very early on the growth side that we made that decision.
What were some of the challenges on the growth side? What decisions that maybe now in hindsight you're like, maybe we would have done something different.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I have to think about that. I mean, the challenge on growth is always really the same, right? It's our industry is a little different, right? So you have to sort of be connected to specific PMSs to be able to be connected to us. And so and PMSs aren't very liberal about giving out contact information, which is fine, and so that's probably good for you to know that some of the partners, they're not giving away that information. So I think the hardest part for us is figuring out and finding out who everybody is. And if I could have a whole list of Hostaway PMCs, that'd be great. I would love that, right? And so I'd say that's our biggest challenge, right? Is making sure that we have that. But we've done an exceptionally good job. We have 300,000 properties live on the platform. I will say this. I'm going to say very quickly that I would love it if we had more urban properties. We have such high demand right now for urban, and we just don't have a ton of urban supply. So I think that's a thing for us, right? Is like making sure that we're meeting demand. Right now, demand outpaces supply for us, and so that's always sort of is what keeps me up at night.
Well, make sure we have 30 urban properties on your platform. So let's put
Great.
a geofence around my
Let's
listings
do it.
so that we don't
Yours
have
is special.
no
Yours
no
is
no
special.
no supply within
No,
a
no more
mile.
supply there.
No.
So I think that's and it's also interesting too, right? Like starting to recognize, I think, some of the trends that you're seeing, right? And so that cities were so sort of shunned post COVID. People did not
Mm.
want to be going to cities post COVID, and I think that cities are making a comeback. I think a lot of the stuff about that's going on with cities, a lot of it is sort of it makes for good news, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of it is overblown.
I mean,
But I think that people are starting to recognize that cities are a good place to come. So we're starting to see demand in cities spike 30, 40, 50% year over year, even higher than that. So,
I
yeah,
mean,
so if you have an urban property, come on in because we could use you right now.
no, urban's great. And
Yeah,
I
it
think some of
is.
the cities, we like, I live in New York City. Our 30 of our properties are in Philadelphia, so we've been there since 2019. So urban market that continues to perform. Urban, it's tougher to the regulations and rules and licenses that you have to do
That's
to
the
get
reason why.
in. But
Yeah,
I mean, as an operator, it's good. You have some artificial constraint on supply, which helps, right? Because there's the more supply, then you have to share that supply with to share the demand with a larger number of competitors. But there's people ask me if it's saturated or not. I think there's plenty of opportunity. You just have to know kind of where to look. And part of being a good short-term rental investor is like this is the education part of actually operating, finding the right properties, and then using having the right distribution strategy. And I definitely agree, like having a Whimstay or having an OTA that specializes in near term listing, more value based listing is really
Can I make actually one comment that you just mentioned? I actually want to mention this because this is somewhat good news for folks. Is that Jamie Lane from AirDNA? If you don't follow some of the stuff that he's talking about, I recommend that you do. He's really smart and he's got the heartbeat and everything is data based. So that supply, that oversaturation supply concern, which is again a post COVID sort of the inertia from kind of everyone in everyone and their mother being like, I'm going to go buy a second home before I buy a first because this is exploding. And the supply was oversaturated. So that number is now not only sort of has level off, but is now going down. So I think that's good news for a lot of folks that are in this to win it, right? That are very, very serious about doing this. That a lot of those folks that were less than serious, but seeing this as potentially a way to make a lot of money quick, they seem to be tailing off. So that supply number is going down. So I think that's something I just wanted to mention for those
yeah.
that maybe don't know that.
No, that's a good point. And we've had Jamie. Jamie came out about a year ago, so Jamie's been on the podcast. So if you
He's great.
Jamie Lyon is the chief economist at AirDNA, really great
Yes.
insights. Listen, if you guys have time, go back and click on STR Like the Best Show. I think it's episode 32 or something. But Jamie's a great listen to. He has a number of Airbnbs. And he actually has an Airbnb that he manages for his family. That's how he got into the business. That was kind of really interesting to hear how he. I feel like everyone kind of falls backwards in this business somehow, and
Yeah, totally.
yeah, no one kind of goes into short term rentals.
No, no.
At least
Me
in the early,
included. No one makes the intention of doing it, and then we get
uh,
sucked in. Right.
there are few industries just dynamic that grows as fast.
And
I
yeah, we talked a little bit about like the maturation of this industry now, and we kind of talked about this sort of you gleamed it a little bit before. Like this industry is becoming more and more mature now. It's becoming sort of an adult industry a little bit, and the way this sort
absolutely,
of technology is coming, and so again, like if you look at how do hotels act, right? Hotels don't put themselves on one OTA and just leave it alone. They have a diverse distribution strategy, and so I think as an industry we need to make sure that's the case. There's great technology, better technology than the hotel world, to be entirely honest, including
yeah,
PMSs, whose technology is better than the hotel technologies. And I think it's time for us as an industry to say, you know what, like we could be the ubiquitous form of lodging and travel. We could be if we wanted to be, but there's some things that we need to make sure that we're doing, and I think one of those things is acting as professionally as we possibly can and utilizing all the technology and OTAs you can.
I agreed. Agreed. I want to actually I want to highlight something that you talked about before, just the compressed booking windows. And we were talking about it a little bit before we came on the pod. There is definitely economic uncertainty. Like, unemployment's still 4.2%. So, most people have jobs, or if you're looking for work, I think there is a job out there. Now, people that had these cushy jobs during COVID, where you kind of could work remotely and do whatever you wanted. And I don't think that, that's definitely going away. There was that, that was kind of good times, but now people are back in the office and working. So there's going to be a dislocation. There's AI. So there are a number of things that we can talk about, but it's causing some, just broader uncertainty in the overall economy. But then you go look at the stock market, S&P 6,000. So, we'll see kind of where things fall out. But specifically on short-term rental traveler behavior, people are waiting closer and closer to the last minute. And what's your recommendation as how do we, besides going on Whimstay or making sure that we're listening on Whimstay, what are some strategies? How should operators think about capturing that last minute demand? Because we've been trained to lower prices as the check-in date gets closer, and now the consumer is trained on that behavior. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And how do operators like us maximize revenue and not just kind of be in this rat race to the bottom as the check-in date nears?
So I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle, because if what is the reason why some of these windows are shortening? Yes, there's economic uncertainty, and I think again, like it goes back to COVID, right? So there's the economic uncertainty, and so that's kind of continued on, right, a little bit. But there's another piece to this which is pretty interesting, and to me, it is the next gen traveler. Stick with me on this for 1 second.
Okay.
And the reason I'm bringing them up is because this is, in my opinion, potentially the biggest tailwind that our industry has. So this is the Gen Z millennial traveler. They travel vastly different than any other traveler ever has, ever, ever, ever. As a matter of fact, Brian Chesky referred to them as the golden age of traveler. So it's that kind of 21, 22 to about like 35-year-old. What they're doing is really remarkable. Number one, they're traveling about 8, 9, 10 times a year, as opposed to like that sort of 1 week long vacation a year. So
Hmm.
they're traveling about 8, 9, 10 times a year. It's mostly micro vacations. So it's like the 3 to 4 day. Most of them are to drive to locations, and they are booking in shorter windows. So there's two things you could do. You can focus on the window itself, or you could focus on the traveler. That I think is the major impetus for the shrinking window. Because yes, that shrinking window is happening in all generations, but it's mostly happening in that one. And so that would be kind of the angle I would look at.
Mm.
What does that mean? And why are they doing this, by the way? So the next gen traveler is they're working from home, just not their home, right? So yes, that working in the office thing is still is happening, but people are still there's still hybrid work and people are still working remotely. So I can be in San Francisco and say, you know what, it's a Monday. I kind of feel like going to Tahoe for 3 days. Why don't I just do that and work from there? That's happening a lot, which means it's filling weekdays, I know a sticking point for a lot of folks. That is happening in the shorter window. And so I think getting to them is probably a really good idea. And then I think if you do get to them, what's essential is ensuring that everything is sort of frictionless and that the hospitality is good, because they've got high expectations. It's just how this generation is. So I'm not dancing around your question, but I am saying, instead of thinking about how do I get to that last minute booking window, I would say, how do I get to that specific traveler?
Traveler.
It means social media, it means being on Instagram, means valuing experiences, it means having a diverse distribution strategy, because they do price check and they do go to different things. It's our number one traveler by a long shot. And so I think that's kind of a way to sort of address that question that you had, which I think is a really good one. So um, I would say, instead of addressing the window, address the traveler,
Mm.
and address that specific traveler. Because if we do this right, if this industry does this right, if we focus on hospitality and focus on that traveler, they will. And I have a theory about this that is born true on data, right? Like, an OTA like ours, we're just a traveler acquisition tool. That's all we are. That's the only way that we should ever be thought of from your guys' perspective. So that means our 5% commission is nothing more than a traveler acquisition tool. So think of it that way. You have acquired that traveler for a 5% commission. If at that point, your focus is on ensuring that they have a great time, everything is good, everything is clean, et cetera, that traveler will book direct next time. No question. And when travelers book direct, that actually helps the entire industry, including OTAs. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but
Hmm.
it's not, because what's going to happen is that they'll come to your place in Philly and they'll be like, I had an amazing time. And if they ever go back to Philly again, they'll go direct to you. And if they don't go to Philly, they'll choose an OTA, but they will go back to the industry. They will go back to the short term rentals. So it does kind of help the industry as a whole. And I think that, so I think if that is kind of a chief focus among operators right now, I think we can surpass hotels at the very
Hmm.
least, but up against them.
I like that reframing versus competing on price and competing to meet that specific traveler. And it's a great insight that like it's that millennial, it's that 21 to 35 traveler that has more mobile, is traveling a lot more times, maybe in then kind of shorter windows, maybe meeting them with better internet,
Yes.
desks,
Yes.
monitor,
Correct.
USB cord, just like things that help remote
Absolutely.
work. Because a lot of
Absolutely.
times people focus on like
And
the
talk
family
about it in your
side.
listing, by the way, and talk about it in your listing.
Yeah,
Strong Wi-Fi, office potential, like talk about that, because
right.
that's a big part of what their decision making is,
Yeah,
and we know that from our data.
exactly. No, yeah, and DoorDash delivers there, and you can get
Right.
Instacart. All the things that we've seen that in some of our inventory too. Like all the things that make it easier for someone that travels light, that just needs their phone and laptop to get around, like two shirts, pair of pants, and then they just need a backpack to travel around. They want to know. It's actually very reassuring that, hey, I can get the services and the experience that I want at your listing. And that's done. It's a great, I really appreciate your insights. It's a different way of, I think we're all so caught up in, kind of how to optimize for Airbnb or Verbo. And then you kind of lose a little bit of the bigger picture of that traveler that's going to be a bigger part of your customer base. And look, I mean, that's a generation that's going to be traveling more and more. So they
Yep.
may not pay the most. So now the challenge is we got to get them to pay more.
That's not my
And
job.
not to be so value focused, but
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
you're
Well,
at
look,
least
I mean,
gathering all of them at the Whimstay watering hole. So at least we can
yeah, I look. I
we
mean,
know what
I
they.
also look. I think that if one person comes in at $200, let's say, and that's a lower ADR than what you like, but you're able to capture that traveler for life, that's incremental, right? And so, and they won't mind at that point if the price point's going to be a little bit higher down the line. They will understand what they are getting, and so I think that's also very, very important. People pay for convenience, and the
People can.
convenience of knowing that, including this generation, by the way, which is not having kids at a higher rate than past generations. So maybe they have a little bit more of a flexible income, but like um, they will be willing to say, I know when I go to Philly, sheets are going to be clean. Everything is going to be good. I'll have the desk that I want. I know, like, so I think that, that stuff's, I think that stuff, it grows incrementally, is really,
Yeah,
ideally at the end of the day, it's all about incremental growth.
right.
It's all about an OTA that gives you incremental revenue, not taking from somebody else. Then what the hell are we doing here? Right?
Well, look, I mean,
Seriously.
at a 5% take rate versus 18 to 20. Well, I guess I don't know what you're charging the guests, but it's because I just maybe lowered it on what Airbnb does, and
It's only
I
four and
think
a half.
more important,
We're about
more
nine. Our total take rate's about 9.5%.
9.5. So you're half of Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
So there's instant value right there. I think two is that you can fill weekdays. That's everyone's.
Oh, good.
For a lot of people, the biggest challenge is they can get Thursday, Friday, Saturday booked, but they really struggle Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And if you've been looking for a solution for that, right, get on the, my view is get on an OTA that whether it's Hostaway or someone else that's easy to integrate, so you can just get like real tooling.
You
That's my
need,
opinion. And then get as much distribution as you can. And
so
I think
can I ask you a question? Do you mind?
yeah,
So
of
besides
course.
sort of gap nights and weekdays, what else keeps you up at night in terms of like booking times?
um, just make. I think example night.
Shoulder season,
I mean,
right?
I think for me, it's like not. I think sometimes not letting our inventory. I think now with the shorter booking windows, not discounting too early. I think we did not do a good job of that Q1, and then we've tested it. You know, we've A/B tested it more and just holding out some rates longer, and we've been able to improve the overall rate that we're getting. So I think that's where we've done we as a company have done a better job. I think for me the biggest challenge right now is just like managing that consumer behavior where they're booking a lot later, and then changing around how our pricing rolls and how we manage our pricing and our inventory. That's been
Right.
I think we're doing a little bit better job. I think there's more room. We have more work to do there.
That's good.
Um,
That's good.
but as we this has been a great comment. I've learned a lot too, so I appreciate you sharing the insight on travel behavior, the traveler archetype, how they think through it. As you kind of think, as you kind of now think through the last 7 years, I think I saw that you or at least thought about this back pre-COVID and then launched post-COVID. But as you kind of think through the journey with your partner, your co-founder, what's one of the nicest things that what's one of the nicest or one of the kindest things that someone's done for you along this journey that's got you to where you are today?
Well, that's so. I'm going to say there is a property manager in Truckee. Name is Dana Marraro, Tahoe signature. And my very first thing, so I we're like, we're gonna do this. Let's do this. Okay, we have a great idea, right? And then there's a lot of reality and truth that strikes you on the face when you go into the office for the first day and you open up your computer and your email is at zero and you're like, what the hell do I do now? And I don't know anything about this industry. And so there's a really funny, interesting, cool story about that actually, where I sat down, opened up my computer at what the hell now? Oh my God. And I actually heard a voice. I actually did. I heard a voice. I know it sounds nuts, but I did. And that voice was, this is a crazy thing for a voice to say, but it was reach out to the North Lake Tahoe Chamber of Commerce. Seems odd, I understand, but something in my head said that, and so that's what I did. And I asked them, I was like, "Do you guys like happen to have a list of people that have short term rentals?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Can you send that to me?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay. Oh, okay." So that was kind of my first day, was getting that list and starting to call, and it was about 200 people. And I got to, and I am not exaggerating you, 197. After 196 people told me to F off or whatever it was, or just hung up on me, 197 was Dana. And what she did was sat there, listened to me, said, "Wow, I think you have a great idea." I said, "Great. We're in Tahoe meeting clients. Do you want to meet?" And she goes, "Yeah." And so I drove up to Tahoe that next day and I sat with her, and she just sat with me and kind of gave me a direction on what to do. We always call Dana our guardian angel because she kind of she told me about PMSs, no clue. She told me what
Okay.
conference to go to. I had no clue. I had no idea what a PMS was. She's like, "Okay, well, you want Streamline?" I'm like, "No." And she goes, "Okay, well, got to get integrated on Streamline first, and then we can connect." And I was like, "Okay." And she was incredibly patient with me, and I think she understood, okay, these guys kind of haven't gotten started yet. So Dana will always kind of be that person to us and to me specifically, just because she, she was our guardian angel, and she was so patient. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Well,
it.
shout out to Dan. That's great. I love that question because I think it gets people to
Great
reflect
question,
on.
dude. I've never been asked it, and I
Yeah.
love it because there's so many
Yeah.
wonderful people along the path, and you've got to recognize them. And I think I'm going to say one thing. I think that it's so easy when you have your own company or you're doing this by yourself that you can like get inundated with what's not working when a lot of times what's working outweighs what's not working, but we tend to focus on what's not working. And I think, and we tend to focus on, and if we can change that focus to this is what is working, and these are the people that have been amazing as opposed to these people who are not so nice. If we can really keep our focus there, it's amazing what can kind of open up for you a little bit, including confidence and gratitude and all those things. That's a really, really good question. I like it a lot, actually.
I appreciate that. No, I think it's good. I think exactly your point. Taking a step back. I think everyone that's listening. In our daily lives, whether you're working, you're building a business, you're always kind of focused on what to fix. I think it is good to zoom out a little bit, like the people that the good things about running a business, the people that you meet, the people that help you along the way without expecting something in return. And I think it just makes the journey more fun, more enjoyable. I mean, the money's the money part, but I think there's always a different. If it's always just about the money, I think it's not as satisfying. It's the people that you meet along the way. So, shout out to Dana.
Shout out to Dana.
Shout out to Dana, your guardian angel, and Alex, appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing your insights, really unique insights on what's really happening in the industry right now, and for folks here that are interested in Whimstay, what's the best way to reach out to you? Like how do we unlock that urban inventory for you?
Super easy. Just go to Whimstay and just go to list your properties, and it takes 5 minutes. So yeah, that's it. It's
okay.
really, really easy. Yeah. Go to Whimstay, top of the page says list your properties. Boom, 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 boom. It'll give you the option. Do you do PMS or do you do Airbnb link? If you do, just figure out which way you're going to go to, and it's really, really a simple process. So, Michael, I really appreciate this. Was a good time, and so I'm happy that we got to hang out.
No, thank you, and shout out to your social media team. They're relentless in getting you on the show. So
they're great.
shout out to them as well.
They're great. They're really
okay,
good.
perfect.
Really good. Shout out Nicole.
If you found this episode valuable, please make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can get notified when I put out new content on Airbnb investing. And if you want to learn about how to work with me more directly, I have links below on my description. Click on those and let's figure out how I can help you with your Airbnb investing journey.